Welcome. We'll get started with our Lunch and Learn Parenting Seminar. I'd like to welcome those of you that are joining us through the webcast, as well as those of you joining us in Building 31 today. We are starting the holidays with two very important topics, one being nutrition, and the other one being there and making the holidays meaningful for you and your children. The first of the series is how to inspire healthy eating habits in children. And today we have Ann Gerber here, who is a registered dietitian, who will lead our discussion today. But before we get started, I have a few items to help us with our discussion. For those of you that are joining us through the webcast, there is a link for the handouts right below where you access the webcast. So please have those available so you can follow along. For those of you that are joining us here in Building 31, if you have a question or a comment, please use your mics that are in front of you. Just hit the button and speak in, and then turn it off, please, when you're finished. That way all the webcasters and those of us that are in the room can hear your wonderful comments and questions. And so we can get started. I'm going to turn it over to Ann.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of eating and growth challenges for the children today. How to meet and beat those challenges, and I'll give you some guidelines for healthy living. And then we'll address some special topics of those who have picky eaters and keeping ahead of the holidays. For those of you who I've spoken to already, there seem to be a lot of younger children. What other age children do we have? 2? Yes?
I have a 4.5-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Okay.
I have a 17-year-old.
And that actually is our range today for the nutritional guidelines that I'll be giving. It's from the ages of 2 years of age to 18. So please feel free to chime in with questions. The session is for you. If I don't cover anything in the presentation, I hope you'll come up to me afterwards as well. So in the last 20 years, our eating environment has changed quite a lot. And a lot of the reasons it's changed is because we have many households now having dual employed parents or caregivers. As a result, this has contributed to the loss of the family meal. It's increased our eating occasions out. And as a result of the dining out experiences, we're seeing bigger portions and more or less nutrient-dense eating. We all come to the table with many nutrition rules, beliefs, and attitudes. They might be low carb, high carb, low protein, high protein. Maybe one of your rules is there's no snacking between meals. Or perhaps you insist on your child to clean the plate. Do any of these sound familiar? So I would ask you a more reflective question, and that is, what kinds of messages are you sending to children? Are they assisting them in making healthy food choices along the way? This is an example of what we're up against. Only 20 years ago, this Coca-Cola, which is a discretionary choice, was 6.5 ounces. Today it's 20 ounces, which is a 165 calorie difference. These bigger servings have contributed to our nation's growth, not just adults, but our children too. And in fact, today, about 1/3 of our population is overweight or obese. By 2015, studies predict that our children between the ages of 6 and 11 will be obese, and same with the 11 to 19-year-olds. And over 40% of our children who are over 20, the young adults, will be obese as well. So my advice to you would be to, as you go to your routine physicals with your children, to pay attention to those height and weights that you get. Have your practitioner chart out their body mass index, see where they fall, and if it's very overweight or very underweight, or if you see a trend in that way, losing or gaining weight, start asking questions, because as you know, prevention is the best means of addressing these issues. We know that food is fuel, but the fuel choice is yours and your children. What we know for optimal moods, performance in terms of physical and cognitive performance, meal patterns that are eaten every 3 to 4 hours with 3 meals and 2 to 3 mini meals in between optimize the energy sources for the children. Your children do the best when they have routine and structure in their lives. So what do they eat? Fortunately, their typical schedules, if they're school age or in daycare or at home, follow breakfast to begin with, and then a school lunch or lunch at home, sometimes an afternoon snack, dinner on the run or at home, and then a before meal snack, or before bed snack. And some families have a mid-morning snack as well. So getting that consistent energy throughout the day is key. Breakfast eaters, with breakfast being the most important meal of the day, seem to do best. They eat a more nutrient-rich diet. They seem to do better with test scores once they're in school. They behave better, their attendance is better, and they're likely to set themselves up to be better weight managers and have overall less chronic diseases. What do you all usually serve your children for breakfasts? Does anybody have good breakfast ideas?
Orange juice, milk.
Can you use your mic, please?
Orange juice, milk, and maybe bacon, ham heated up.
Mm-hmm. And maybe round that out with some toast or...
Well, the issue is getting the time limit on catching the bus and that type of thing. I mean, so sometimes the things that are, that's an issue.
Time constraints are really critical with families, and so any pre-planning you can do, you know, getting up a little early, planning things the night before will help your cause. But having breakfast is the most important thing. Anybody else?
My 4-year-old wants to eat dinner food at breakfast. Does that matter?
It certainly doesn't matter to me. And you can flip that around too. Breakfast for dinner is okay as well. Yeah, as long as they're hitting a few of the main food groups, that's fine. I know my daughter had capellini for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a couple years. But some other ideas might be an English muffin with some Canadian bacon and some cheese. It's nice, portable, and maybe with a glass of juice along with it. Perhaps 2 whole wheat waffles with some peanut butter on it. Cereal milk with some strawberries is certainly fine. The choice is yours. So maintaining a healthy body, my approach is that all foods fit, but it's mostly to your child's advantage to keep portions in proportion. And a great tool to use for this is the Food Guide Pyramid. It is a personalized approach. If you go to www.mypyramid.gov, you'll be able to see what your child's needs are. And I'm going to give you an example of one child, but it's personalized according to the gender, the age, and how active the actual child is. Here's our example. This is a 9-year-old child who's in about the 50th percentile for the her body mass index, she needs about 1,800 calories to get her through the day to maintain where she is. And she exercises on average 60 minutes of physical activity per day, which is what the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends. If we break it down into food groups, you'll see that she needs about 6 grains, preferably most of them being whole grains, 4 cups of fruits and vegetables, and I lump those 2 groups together, 3 cups of dairy, and most of your children are above the age of 2, which is a great time to transition to low or no fat dairy, whether it be cheese, milk, or yogurt. 5 ounces of beans or meats, and some discretionary oils and calories, which would be the things that taste good but aren't necessarily health promoting, such as candies, cakes, cookies, sodas. So small amounts of those items, and that's under the 18-calorie matrix. Yes?
I have 4 cups fruits and vegetables.
Can you use your mic, please?
Have 4 cups of fruits and vegetables. Is it important that it's half and half, 2 cups fruits and half vegetables, or could it be 3 cups fruits and 1 cup vegetable, or does it so much matter? You're lumping them together.
I'm lumping them together because they're all plant-based foods. They all provide vitamins and minerals, fiber, and nutrients. So what you're trying to do is to develop good eating styles and selections. So I put them together. Because some children like vegetables better, not many, but a lot of children like fruits more. Does that answer your question?
So I had another question too about the dairy products and transitioning to low fat or lower fat calories. So my son is 2 now, and he doesn't. So I've tried the whole transitioning, but he just doesn't like it. So how do you recommend transitioning to a lower
That's a great
fat?
question. Sometimes it takes a very long time for the transition to take place. And the more gradual you can make it, he's already reacted. He doesn't like what you've tried. So if you could start maybe and you're going to have to be pretty stealth-like to do this, but to use maybe even the same gallon container, but to make it perhaps 1/4 non-fat and 3/4 whatever the full fat milk, or whatever your proportions are.
Well, that was what I was doing. I was doing that too. I was doing a 1/4 and 1/2 because I do that with the juice. I still dilute juice too, and it's still not working.
Okay. Well, I think
I
readiness.
guess when is it the most important? Like, at what time I know after 2 there's a transition, but when should I absolutely kind of be?
Those are guidelines. So
Okay.
It didn't work for now, but perhaps it will work on different occasions, maybe when he has a friend over, or maybe if you add a little chocolate to it. I don't have a problem with flavoring milks as long as they drink milk. So you might want to postpone another trial for a little while, but and give it a break, but do come back to it.
Along
Yes.
those lines, so my daughter's 4 and I still have her on whole milk, but she's very, very lean. So is it, does it really matter if they're a lean and healthy? She's actually close to underweight. So
Yeah, and in your case, obviously, I don't think you want to make the change quite so quickly. But over time, you will want to reduce it because fat is an important component of a healthy meal plan, especially for little ones. They need it for the fat-soluble vitamins to be absorbed, and they need a little bit of fat to protect their organs. So if that's what's working for you now, I wouldn't necessarily change it. Yes.
Do eggs fit into dairy or to meat? I've
That's a
heard-
great question. Each egg is considered a meat. They are one egg is generally 1 ounce, and so I would put them in the meat category. They lump foods together according to what they're most like. Does that
How about children that can't have regular milk because they're like lactose intolerant? So my youngest son is actually using lactate milk right now. We tried the soy, but he wasn't a fan of that. Are there other ways that he can get some of the nutrients that would be normally in cow's milk?
Well, he's probably getting all that he needs through the lactate if you're willing to stick with that. But obviously the other sources of dairy, which would be cheese and yogurt, would be helpful as well. Soy-based, obviously, or regular. If we translate it to food, what we're looking at is, for breakfast, possibly, for this 9-year-old, 2 pieces of whole wheat toast with a little bit of butter, an egg, a cup of strawberries, and some milk. That takes a little bit of time and preparation, but that's one example. She could go on to a packed lunch, which would be a turkey sandwich with some carrots and clementines. So lots of color in their meal plans. That's how you're setting them up for a healthy life over the long term. A carton of milk to go with that. Before I go forward, this is the classic school lunch, and although it doesn't look that appetizing, this is breadsticks with marinara sauce and some chicken nuggets with a blueberry cobbler. The Montgomery County School District does have a wellness policy, and they are required to follow strict guidelines as far as what they're providing to your children. So everybody has a varying opinion about school lunch, but it is generally healthy for the children. Then in the afternoon, my favorite apple, which is a Honeycrisp apple with some string cheese and possibly a lean chicken breast with some quick cooking couscous, whole wheat preferably, and some broccoli, and then finishing out the evening maybe with some ice cream or some sort of treat, if you will, or like I said, the other option is a mid-morning snack. Of the food groups that I just mentioned, dairy is the most critical during your children's years, these years. These are the bone-building years. The picture on the right is a solid matrix of well-mineralized bone. And recently, you may have heard about it in the news, there's been an increase in the recommendation by the American Academy of Pediatrics to have 400 international units of vitamin D. And this will help offset chronic diseases, not only as pediatric patients, but also for adolescents and adults down the road. Vitamin D itself helps bring calcium into the bones. And so the beauty of milk and milk products is that they can help build strong bones, not just now, but to keep people healthy in the future months.
Would you say this is up to what age that you consider milk?
Late 20s.
Oh, to late 20s. So you're extending childhood, sort of, or the importance of it to that late.
But
Okay.
really very important
Okay.
in these early years.
Okay.
Into the teen years, the demands grow higher as far as what they need. In the earlier years, it's about 2 cups, then it graduates to 3 cups, and then in the adolescent years to 4 cups. So dairy is a great food in that it provides quality carbohydrates, protein, and then your calcium and vitamin D. And calcium and vitamin D are most rarely found in the
You
dairy
said to
group.
late 20s or early 20s?
Late 20s,
Okay.
usually. So the trend is we tend to eat a lot of animal protein as a population, but what I would encourage you to do as you're serving your children or as they serve themselves is to redesign the plate so you have all the antioxidants and phytochemicals of plant-based foods and using the meat as a condiment. Whoop. I missed one somehow. Environmental controls can help your cause. Bringing foods into the house and taking foods away that might create a problem. So having your cupboard, your refrigerator, your pantry packed with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, putting a vegetable tray on the counter when you can. The food manufacturers are helping us a lot by providing dried fruits and vegetables that are in very convenient packages so that it will make our ability to feed our children nutrient-rich foods much more easy. So do you know what I'm saying about the nutrient foods? Can you see what the difference of these two might be? We have a scone from Starbucks, easy to eat, portable. We have and it's about 400 calories. Tastes really great. On the other side, we have something that takes a little bit more time, maybe about the same money, but is so much more healthful. Raspberry cheese, some pretzel chips, and a yogurt. How does that sound to you? Maybe a little harder to pack, but if you're ready for your children as you pick them up at the end of the day or as they get into the door, if you can have that ready, it helps minimize some of the battlegrounds. And when they're hungriest, they're more likely to eat the healthier foods. We already addressed drinks. Milk and water are great drinks as well as flavored waters. And energy drinks for the older ones aren't necessary. In fact, they have as much caffeine or 2 times the amount of caffeine as some sodas. And they can, even though they're energy drinks, they can interfere with your child's sleep patterns and elevate their blood pressure and pulse. So if they find themselves dragging and really tired, I would really prioritize their diet and their sleep schedule a little bit more than adding in energy drinks.
I'm sorry, I have another question. Sorry.
Sure.
With the flavored waters,
Sure.
I find that some of them have a lot of sugar in them. So how do you, so there's sugar substitutes obviously out there that are being used in some of the flavored drinks. Like, how does that affect the child's?
The flavored waters that have a lot of sugar in them are very similar to soda. I'm referring more to sparkling waters and waters that just have a little hint of lemon or something. The non-caloric flavored waters.
Anne,
Yes.
could you please, what's the guidelines on like juice with Splenda? You know, a lot of juices come out. You know, you talk about diluting juice with water or getting the juice that's light with Splenda. What's the thought process about artificial sweeteners in young children?
Those are really 2 great issues into one. First of all, fruit juice. Overall, it's better for your child to eat the whole fruit than fruit juice, mainly because they get a lot of extra fiber in the actual fruit and the phytochemicals that come with it that have those protective properties. And so whenever you can give your child a whole apple versus apple juice, that's all the better. Diluting it helps. A lot of the fruit juices and drinks in general are coming out with the non-nutritive sweeteners. They are approved and are safe for all ages of our population. Moderation would be the key. Obviously going without would be better. But if those are your choices, I would just provide them in moderation. And stevia is all natural. I mean, that's a new one that's out. Was there another question in the back? Does that help? Okay. You see Gatorade and sports drinks all over the place. And just a little background on them. They were designed for the athlete or for the child that's on the sports field for greater than 90 minutes, or they have a very high sweat rate, or they're not sure how long they're going to actually be out there so that they can maintain their electrolytes in their body. So Gatorade for the child at rest isn't necessary, but to have small amounts available for the competitions or for a lot of excessive play in the heat of the summer is a good idea. So that's the background on laying the foundation to meal plans and establishing healthy patterns. But we have the topic of picky eaters. Who here has a picky eater? Oh gosh. Okay, so please speak up if I try to answer as many questions as we can. Many times these situations frustrate parents to no end. In fact, you might be asking yourself, why me? I'm a great cook. There's no reason they shouldn't like this. And you take it very personally. Well, there might be a little bit more to it. And part of the reasons I wouldn't take so personal. One component might be that it's genetic. We know that some of our children are predisposed to being tasters. They have a gene that makes some foods, particularly the cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, taste extremely bitter, whereas to someone else they taste practically bland. So some might have that gene, and some of the research has actually been done here at NIH. There might be a behavioral component where the parents are insisting that they eat not just the food, but a certain amount of the food. And the child sees the reaction of the parent, likes the attention even though it's negative attention, and so there might be a little battle going back and forth. The child might want to just have that be their time where they express their opinions, and they're just kind of strong-willed. So there might be some behavioral issue or control issues going on. There also might be historical patterns being developed within the family. For instance, because you know that meatloaf on Monday works best, Taco Tuesdays is a great follow-on, and pasta on Wednesdays, this might lead to narrowing the food choices just by your systemic approach to serving food. Yes?
Pasta considered a grain?
Mm-hmm.
Because my son could eat pasta all the time. I mean, it could be spaghetti, it could be pizza, it could be the forms of other things besides spaghetti that come in like the shell type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a grain, but it's very fattening, isn't it, pasta?
Yeah, and that's one of the notions that's out there. Generally speaking, if looking at the pie chart, the majority of your child's meal plan should be carbohydrate. The difference between pasta and Snickers would be the fact that pasta, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, they're all quality carbs. They do provide energy. Your children need energy as fuel to get them through their days. And the same applies to adults. The problem with pasta, I think, a lot of adults at least see it as a problem, is the portions get way out of control. A lot of people eat far more than they expect to, for instance. So pasta itself is a great food. If you have whole grain pasta, is it better? Of course. But again, shoot for half of your grains for the day to be whole grains. Some people like whole grain pasta, some don't. And those products are getting better all the time. Is that clear? Okay. So some tricks that might make your meal times a little bit more successfully, or hopefully, is to try to take the emotion out of it. Try to stay calm and relaxed, which is definitely easier said than done, yes? But if you can view food as neutral, that you're providing nourishment to the children, it is a labor of love. But if your children just neglect it, please don't take it personally, and just know that they're not hungry for that food at this particular time in the day, this particular time in their life, but they may learn to like it later. So avoid using food as a reward, as punishment, or as bribes. This is a sure way to develop struggles and battles. The more you can get your children involved, whether it be in the growing process, the menu planning process, cooking, shopping, whatever phase, and then eventually eating the meal, the snack, the better, the more they're going to enjoy the foods that are served to them. Don't you think? It takes time, but find those times when you're more relaxed and you have the time to engage your children. Yes.
So this is an ongoing struggle for us, and it's very frustrating because as a 2-year-old, our daughter ate everything, like asparagus, vegetables were great, and our 14-month-old starting to get picky. But anyway, the reward concept, I have a question about, we won't let her have dessert if she hasn't at least tried her vegetable. Is that presenting confrontation? When my husband and I kind of differ, that's why I'm
it's
partly
great
here.
that you brought up your husband, because it is important that you stand as one.
Yeah. Last night was a tough one.
But you can see, if we dissect that a little bit, that the dessert has become all the more desirable. But it's because it's been put out there as a reward. And the taste, she's afraid of. Or she doesn't want to.
She's so stubborn. So yeah, sometimes she doesn't like taste. But sometimes she's tasted something, said, yes, that tastes good. And then we're like, okay, don't you want to eat more? Nope. She won't do it. She only will. So it's a real power struggle. And we don't know the best approach.
Well,
so I don't want to totally get off topic. But
no, that's a great question. And it really feeds into what we were saying before, which is she's trying to win the little battle. And so if you can take the emotion out of it and just serve it, and then it's up to her if she eats it or does a trial, then it will become more routine for her to have it on her plate. It's kind of a form of exposure therapy. And maybe over time, and sometimes in some cases it takes as many as 7 to 20 times for them to try it, or to have it on their plate for them to even try it. And obviously, when they're hungriest, it's best to have these things around. And as many as 90 times, so it may take years for them to actually enjoy a full serving. So that's where we have to allow for individual differences.
And then do we just take dessert off the table, period?
I think so.
Not literally off the table, but not even a concept that enters, period. Just for not having dessert anymore.
You can even have fruit for dessert.
Okay. Because she'd be happy to ignore her entire plate and just eat a small bowl of ice cream if that was her option. Mm-hmm. So that's not sustainable either.
So, maybe, there's certainly room for discretionary calories, but perhaps give those to her earlier in the day, but I wouldn't put it out there as a reward.
Okay.
Yes?
You can go.
So if they are nothing appeals to them, and they reject the whole serving, whatever you have, is it okay just to, usually this is at dinner time, to say, okay, this is the meal for the day. If you don't eat this, you may be hungry, but just not offer other alternatives.
The rule of thumb on offering alternatives is, first of all, you don't want to be a short order cook. If you decide to make substitutions, it would be helpful to offer a substitution within the same food group. And this won't be that attractive to the child, but say carrots for red peppers, or something like that, or peas for broccoli, and so they'll see soon enough that it's not like they're getting their favorite food. The other rule of thumb is to keep familiar foods around so that they don't go hungry. So that, maybe if you always have bread, whole wheat bread, preferably some milk and some fruit around, which are the common foods that children like, and then offer the other things as well so that their anxiety levels are down, and you can really focus on providing a well-balanced meal, but they choose what they're going to actually have.
I'm really concerned, sorry, about the whole going hungry thing. Because, I mean, he's 2, and if he could eat chicken all day, he would. And, I mean, he could eat probably a full chicken breast if I would let him. So it's, he only likes rice and beans and chicken. It's really hard to get him to eat a vegetable unless it's, like, pureed, which I didn't know if that's a good thing to do. So, like, he won't eat broccoli or cauliflower, but if I put it in the food processor and blend it, he might eat it.
Well, texture change is certainly an option. Changing the
Okay.
shape, texture, or the method of preparation.
Yeah,
And
I just
so-
don't know how much is enough. Like, does that make sense? So I think that he's getting some, but, like, how do I know that he's getting the right portion, I guess?
Well, we have to trust our children to self-regulate.
Okay.
And so part of these guidelines are teaching them to learn their internal cues, teaching them to speak up, you know, if they want more of something. And so it is difficult to assess. You can use the food guide pyramid as an assessment tool too. It's interactive to see where they are with things, just to kind of double check yourselves. But you know, trying the different ways of serving it is certainly a great idea. And if they're really stuck on only just a couple food groups, I would also encourage perhaps a multivitamin to go along with it.
I just wanted to say that I've put vegetables in scrambled eggs before. Oh, you've tried that and it didn't work? Oh, okay.
He doesn't like eggs. I think so I don't know if I have, like, if this is a problem, but I made my own baby food. And so he's used to that. He will eat anything the way that I prepared it as his baby food. But when it comes to actually eating it on a plate, if it's not rice, he hates pasta. He doesn't like potatoes. I mean, he doesn't like carbs except for rice, and beans and chicken. So those are the things he'll eat in its normal texture, but anything else, it has to be blended. But I don't know if that becomes a problem later. So I'm thinking preschool, and like, he won't eat a sandwich. I can't give him, like, bread or crackers with, like, peanut butter on it or whatever. He won't eat it.
Well, not for now, but there's a such thing as positive peer pressure.
Okay.
And as he
Okay,
gets
yeah, I'm
into
just
the
worried.
preschool ages, it can work to your detriment as well as to your advantage.
Right.
He will see some children coming in with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a turkey sandwich, and he may think that child's cool. And so
Okay.
they may try it. It might not happen when he's
I know,
3.
I'm so worried.
But those are great foods to like: beans,
Okay.
rice, and chicken.
Well, I know it's not bad, but I'm just worried. So a lot of the preschools that I'm looking into, they either don't want you to bring, like, their own lunches from home, and he won't eat those kinds of foods there. I'm just really worried. Do you get anybody? Okay, yeah.
She hates pizza, right? So they have pizza
He won't eat
Wednesdays, and they alternate with chicken. Everyone said the peer pressure, she'll start eating the pizza. Nope, she's perfectly happy taking her packed lunch. But your key message seems to be just continue to present a well-rounded balance, but don't have any pressure. Eventually they'll pick up on it and use a multivitamin in the meantime.
Yes, just for the extra insurance.
Okay.
If there's food around, I don't think they'll starve.
Yeah, no,
I'm
but
sorry?
she'll do the same thing. She'll eat all of her favorite, and she'd be happy going hungry rather than trying the other things. She's done it before.
Yeah, he's been doing that. He's actually dropped 2 pounds in the last few months just because I don't know.
If you're concerned about your child's weight, I would schedule an extra appointment.
Sorry. He's 37 pounds and he's 2. And he's 36 inches tall, so he's like a pound an inch. He's very solid.
Okay.
So,
Well, if you want to double check yourself,
I know.
do schedule an extra visit with your practitioner or a dietitian, and they can just
No, I know.
assure you
Yeah.
that he's doing okay. But it's great that you're concerned, but I wouldn't worry about him getting what he needs unless they're falling off the curve in terms of a lot of weight loss.
Okay.
Then obviously it's of great concern and to
Okay.
address it earlier.
Okay.
Yes.
I have 2 daughters, and one of them is totally the opposite of yours. Because she can go without eating for days. She's not interested by food at all. If I feed it to her, that's when she eats it. and she's in first grade right now. So I give her sandwich. She's very sensitive to smell, and we're vegetarian, so sometimes it makes it a little difficult. I give her peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She won't eat it. She eats her banana in school, brings back the sandwich. She says, I don't like it because there are too many smells around me. So she won't eat it. So I don't know what else I can give her that she'll eat. It's just, sometimes it's hard. I have another one, but she's totally the opposite. She's 3.5. She'll eat everything, taste everything. But this first one's given me a lot of trouble.
Isn't that interesting? They're both in the same household.
Yeah, and they're totally opposite.
And they may be playing off of each other a little bit.
Yeah.
But beans are a pretty neutral food.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's interested in eating beans.
If I feed her, then it's fine. But if she was to eat it herself, then she'll just opt on not eating at all.
So when you get your chance, I would go ahead and maybe, she's how old?
She's 6.5.
Oh, she's
First
6.5.
grade, yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say go ahead and feed her, but...
And that's what I have to do. At dinner time, that's what I'm doing because I want her to get the protein that she needs. So I end up doing that, which is not good. I know that, but that's the only way I can get into her.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's maybe her way of getting extra attention.
Yeah.
But make sure that you pay attention to the whole family while it's happening because it's her way of getting extra mommy time, I think. Maybe.
Yeah.
This is just a general question. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 9-month-old baby. My first daughter is a great eater. My question for people who have more than one child, do sometimes picky eaters sort of like spoil the good eating habits of another child? You know, like maybe the siblings, adding a sibling in the mix. I know your younger daughter doesn't like orange things, and then suddenly your older daughter doesn't like orange things either.
Yes,
Something like that. Does it
it
happen?
Does anybody else want to answer that? Or
I haven't seen that with my daughter. My younger one loves food, and she will eat no matter what. So
Okay, because I mean the baby's too young for me to know yet how good of a
the older
eater.
the older one's not rubbing off on her.
Okay.
The older one will sit without eating, and the other one will just sit there and keep on eating.
so, really, your question is
Just curious about family dynamics, how throwing another child in the mix may modify the habits of the previous child, or just curiosity.
overall, hopefully, it's a help. And we're going to be talking about the family meal, which, in the case of an older sibling or a younger sibling, their influences can help. By them saying, "This tastes so good, Mom," or the parents eating it and them seeing sheer enjoyment from it. It can help them learn to like other foods over time. The yuck factor can also happen as well, but hopefully less often. Yes.
In your experience with preteens, I have a 10-year-old girl and a 7-year-old boy, and the 7-year-old is the one who's picky. My 10-year-old, I can see some hormonal changes and things, and I'm just wondering, is it pretty common or typical for a child going into teen years to not be hungry like they used to be? I mean, I would think that they'd be more, but she's not interested in food as she used to be, and she's very limiting now. She's becoming much more picky than she was before.
Mm-hmm. I think over time you all will see lots of different eating behaviors from your children. In the prepubescent years, you're right, typically you see an increased appetite, and usually there's a little weight gain before they actually enter into the adolescent years, before they really go through a rapid growth spurt just to prepare their bodies for the growth. But everybody's different, and if the pattern continues, I think you just being aware of it. Maybe you want to have a little talk with her about and get her involved in the kitchen and see, maybe there aren't enough foods around that she likes. Maybe her appetite is being affected for some reason that you can investigate. or maybe it's just her natural way. So as we discussed, there is a division of responsibility, and the meals go best when the parents serve the foods or the caregiver serve the foods and vegetables, but the child decides what and if they're going to eat. The parents and the older and younger siblings, particularly the older siblings, can have an influence on your children. And so the family meal is probably your best investment of time during these growing up years. What we know about family members who participate in family meals is that they feel safe and secure. They love being together. Hopefully it's a time to laugh and to share the day's activities and perhaps learn what's going on in the news, the world. Some of your children are a little bit young for that at this point, but it's a wonderful time to share. And if you can relax and just have the food as ready as possible before you walk into the door and take a few deep breaths, I think you'll find that the family meal will be just a wonderful experience if it isn't already. The studies have suggested that the family meal will help prevent behavioral problems. It reduces the risk of alcohol and substance abuse and cigarette smoking, so it goes beyond just the nutrient-rich foods that your children eat. The family meal is usually has far less sugar and fat than the meal that's eaten out.
So I have one other question. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm asking a lot. But this is with my niece. But when do you know? How's the difference between a picky eater and one that has like an eating disorder? So she has body issues already at 5, thinking she's not thin enough, and then not eating, being a picky eater too. So when do you? How early should you intervene in that kind of picky eating versus eating disorders, or distinguishing the two?
It's a very fine line, and at age 5, it's very rare that something like that would come up. However, since you are paying attention to it, I think this is a critical time that you continue to relax around meal times, provide the meals, don't restrict, don't try to force feed or use the rewards, and really let her self-regulate as much as possible. If you see that she's restricting on her own, that's when a trip to the doctor, or if you see that there's a large weight loss, you certainly would want to get her a visit, because they can start as early as 5, 6, 7, 8, but more commonly in the teen years. You can tell. So she might be more prone to develop an eating disorder. Not to worry you, but it's great that you're looking out for it. So welcome to National Eating Season. I'm sure you've seen your environment change quite a lot in the last week, starting on Saturday, maybe before if you bought your Halloween candy early. It usually extends into Super Bowl Sunday or beyond, Valentine's Day with lots of chocolates. So my question to you is, what is your strategy with candy? These are all examples of 200 calories worth of discretionary calories. So the amount that they need is actually very small. They don't really need it, but the serving should be small. Who has some suggestions as to what they're doing with all their treats? Yes.
Well, I only have a 2.5-year-old daughter that went out this weekend, so I don't have a very extended experience, but my approach was, we only visited 2 houses, and she got a few treats in each house, and then that night she had some, and overnight I threw the rest. So she had her Halloween night, so to speak, and she never thought about her candy anymore after that.
Oh, you just made a night of it. That's nice.
Yeah, just a night. So
it's wonderful. Thank you. Yes.
One of the moms on the parenting listserv found an organization that collects extra candy, and she was willing to be the coordinator for NIH for Building 31 and bring it over to the organization that ships it over. So for my kids, we made, sort of an activity of it as, giving to other people who don't have it. And it worked fine. I think it could have worked better, but I let them have, the candy that they wanted.
Well, and actually that's a great point, because we are looking for progress, not perfection. We talked about how difficult it is when you have all these extraneous treats around the house to continue to say no, 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 or they sneak or hide. And so if you can come up with a strategy maybe beforehand next year, that would be good. You can still do it now, where if you collect it and give it to some people who didn't have the opportunity to actually trick-or-treat themselves, send it to the troops. I know some orthodontics offices are collecting extra treats, and they'll be giving it away as well. Have your husbands take it off to the office. But they do feel like they worked hard for the candy, so sometimes it's hard to take it back. Some people have offered a rationing program that they can have so much each day. They don't really care when. Any other suggestions?
To follow up, so this particular mom who's doing the coordination gave me a great idea. She said that she got her classroom involved, and so the teacher actually made it a math activity. So all the kids brought their extra candy, and they were sorting and weighing and all that other stuff. So that's just, I think, something that I'm going to try to do for next year, work with our teachers to do that.
That's great.
Now, my boys are probably unusual, but when it comes to candy, they could take it or leave it, which is good, because when we take them trick-or-treating, we usually go to a mall or something, and we end up getting a relatively small amount of candy. So, it gets rationed out over time. The big problem is that the largest consumer of the candy usually ends up being me, not them. So, obviously, my kids must be unusual, because, as I said, we could, go trick-or-treating, we could let them have one piece, and they would care less about the rest.
Wow, that's wonderful. And it is a great activity to go out and get a bunch of free stuff.
One of the things we did was, normally I feel like we are too heavy on the regulatory end of things with our children's candy, and so this year actually when we came home from trick-or-treating, it was a free-for-all, and they were allowed to eat as much as they wanted, because I was like, I feel like we are too involved in deciding how much is appropriate, and so I didn't think either of them were ever feeling the ramifications of eating too much of it, and so they ate a ton, and lo and behold, later on in the evening, my older son was like, I don't feel that well, Mama. My tummy hurts. I was like, gee, I wonder why that might be. What do you think, sweetie? But it was actually, I thought, a really valuable lesson, because otherwise it was never going to get to that point, and we were always the ones who were sort of setting these boundaries. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean that now the candy's in the house, it's just total free-for-all, and now we're sort of going with the rationing thing, and he gets some every day, but that I actually thought was a really valuable lesson. And it was just a one-off deal. We weren't going to have this free-for-all all the time.
Yeah, I think that was a terrific approach, and it allowed him to get in touch with the cause and effect.
Yeah.
So another thing that we did in our community, since we have a bunch of 2- and 3-year-olds that are kind of too young to go out at night, well, we think they're a little too young to be out that late, but we had a party in one of the houses with all of the goods, but then when they did go out toward the earlier part of the night, they had the trick-or-treat for UNICEF boxes, and so they didn't collect candy, they collect goods, and then they all came back and we took it to the store. So, yeah, that was another alternative for young kids.
Okay. So you all have your different approaches. I hope some of these ideas helped you too, but I would just encourage you to be vigilant about your environment. If you're going to a potluck, just know that this is a time when there are many, many extraneous sweets leading into Thanksgiving and the winter holidays and then on into January. And if you have a chance to go to a potluck, bring something that you know your children will like and something that's relatively low fat and plant-based if you get a chance, because we're sure that there'll be probably plenty of meats available. As I mentioned, activity is the key to setting your child up for a healthy lifestyle. It helps you look, perform, and be your best. There's lots of great reasons to do so, whether it's just strengthening your body, increasing your flexibility, but keep it in your child's life every day if you can. We do have a trend of phys ed classes being phased out in different schools. So if that's the case, you'll have to work a little bit harder to get activity into your children's lives. So the ultimate goal is to follow the guidelines, hopefully, that we reviewed, and to not only prepare meals, but mini meals, get ahead of your children so that they don't have as many opportunities to whine or to ask and have the buffet of choices for you, which makes your job a lot more difficult. Have family meals as often as possible. If you currently have 2, try to bump it up to 3. We're just looking for progress, not perfection. Get physical activity in your life, either with your children or with the children themselves, either in structured classes or simply riding their bike outside. And 10 hours of sleep not only helps with restoration, but it does help regulate their weight over time, and obviously a time for their repair to occur in their body. Here are some resources for you. Feel free to contact me or to come up afterwards with additional questions, but I so appreciate you coming today. And I will pass these books around, and because you had so many thoughtful questions and you want to expand your child's palette, I would like to give you this, but the rest of you feel free to take a look at these books, if you will.
And also, there is an evaluation form in your packet. If you would please help us to provide more informative discussions such as we had today. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you that came today. This is probably the most interactive group that we've had, with such wonderful, wonderful questions and suggestions. So we do appreciate you joining us here in 31 today. For those of you that joined us late, the seminar will be available on the webcast in about 3 days. They need to add the closed caption. And there are other resources here at NIH. Some of them are listed in your handouts, but also the Parenting Listserv is a wonderful place to ask other parents other suggestions. We've had great success with that, and parents really do appreciate your comments, and you can join that website. You can go to the RRS Child Care website, which is located in the handouts as well. So, Ann, thank you very much for coming. It was a wonderful seminar, and thank each and every one of you that have joined us today. Our next seminar will be December 8th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., which is the Presents for the Holidays, PRESENC, which are ways to make sure that you're making the most of your holidays for you and for your children. Thank you, and have a good day.